Frank Gehry's extraordinary building in Bilbao, the Guggenheim Museum. Those of you who've visited it will remember the amazing curves, the arrangement of space, the integration into the urban environment, the main bridge to the city running right through the museum, and the museum created around that pre-existing structure. It's an extraordinary icon of modern design. And those who visited might also remember the technical virtuosity required to create that design. It's coated in titanium. The color and the appearance comes from the innovative use of that metal to coat this building, and a building where there's hardly a straight line, where every curve is dynamic. And the engineering required to create the titanium panels was innovative and extraordinary. You could say you couldn't have done it before the age of advanced computer technology, although given what the ancient Greeks accomplished in the Parthenon, I suspect that human ingenuity might still have found a way. I'm not an architect, I'm not a product designer, I'm not even from California. I'm a humble consultant. I'm part of Strategy & which is an old company, going back to 1914 as Booz & Company, and since April has been part of the PwC network. And we have the modest, but I hope practical role of helping the people who are our clients translate their imagination and their aspirations through strategy, through programs of action, and through organizational design and change into the reality, the dreams of which they are capable. And we work for companies all over the world, 741 different companies last year, and I thought I'd just pick out two things which we've been seeing recently which are particularly relevant to the topic of today's conference. And the first is the importance of managing the informal organization and the growing ability to manage the informal organization as effectively as we have managed the formal organization. There's a long, long history of managing formal structures, lines and boxes, incentives, structures that are formally set up to run companies. We know how to do that. Everyone has always known that the reality of companies is that the water cooler, the informal conversations, the patterns of behavior, the culture, the networks of communication, the mindset, everyone has always known that those things are just as important as the formal organization. What we're seeing is the extension of conscious design from focusing on the formal to embrace the informal as well as the formal, so that you can make a decision about what you are working, which tool you're using to solve the problem. And many of the most successful and innovative companies are distinguished more by their use of the informal organization than their formal. You take IKEA, a company which has had a design mission to take great design in furniture, affordable once upon a time only for the few, and turn that into something that is accessible to practically everyone. That's the mission of the company. They don't accomplish it by anything very different about the formal design. They have a conventional, functional structure within their retailing business. But what is very different is how they manage their informal organization, how they inculcate the spirit of constant cost reduction in everyone, how they make everyone feel that they are empowered. We had that image of the man leaping off the bungee cord earlier today. And again, if you can get that into your employees, you've achieved an enormous amount. And you can do that with the informal organization as well as the formal organization. How do you do that? Well, when we talk to people about what's important in successful organizational development, the top of the list is always the information flows. So a place to focus in the informal organization is how the information is moving around. And there are more and more tools to do that. Every company has email. You can do email tracking analysis where you can see who talks to who, how frequently. And that gives you a different sort of map of how the organization is really moving. And as the tools of social network analysis develop, and as we learn to apply that in an effective and responsible way, that will become a fundamental component of organizational design. And that will allow you to understand what's going on so you can manage it. Everyone knows Fred. Fred's the man who you turn to if you want to know the history, if you want to know what really happened in China, what really happened to that product 5 or 10 years ago. Most companies have someone, a sort of a node. That works well enough when you're a certain size. Bring in a new acquisition, add a lot more product lines, Fred may get overloaded. If you know that, because you know that people are contacting Fred, you can do something about it. Maybe you put in a formal system. Maybe you find another Fred. Maybe you give Fred some more resources, lots of different solutions. The point is that the informal organization is becoming manageable as an integrated part with the formal organization. And the more tools you have, the more you can do with your organization. That's the first point. Second big thing is around innovation. Now, I'm always rather suspicious of these sort of grand pieces of data, but this is a rather fun chart. Google is trying to digitize all human knowledge, and they've gone back in history and digitized lots and lots of books, which are out of copyright and so forth. And someone's done a search of these two terms, business efficiency and business innovation, over that vast historical database, and this is what they come up with. I don't know, I wasn't there in 1930, so I don't know whether or not it actually represents reality, but it's a rather good visual demonstration of something that we absolutely see, which is that there is constant increasing demand for innovation in business models and business design. Coming out of 7 or 8 years of cost cutting, people are really looking for ways to grow, and innovation is central to that. So we keep getting asked, how can I innovate more effectively in my business design and in doing that? And first place to go is to segment what it is you're trying to do. And the big segmentation here is between the incremental and the truly breakthrough. Now, there is nothing wrong with incremental. And there are some phenomenally successful companies that have prospered almost entirely around incremental innovation. Reckitt Benckiser, I do a lot of work in FMCG. Reckitt Benckiser, a spectacularly financially successful company which focuses entirely on incremental response to defined consumer needs. And everything is integrated. They don't do breakthrough scientific research. Very, very successful. But sometimes that simply runs out of steam. And you really need to invent your iPhone, not the incremental improvement, but the fundamental, radically different approach. And these different types of innovation require different sorts of organization, different sorts of process. Now, if you're going to a completely new business, we have tools like venturing units or acquisitions that you bring and keep standalone to do that. And in the existing business, for incremental, we can work that through the hierarchies and so forth. But if you're talking about breakthrough innovation, what we see a different process being needed to help your managers achieve the creativity that we've been talking about today. And the root of this process is to define the problem and then to break it down and learn from other places. So let me go back in history and pick the first of these, Henry Ford. Everyone knows the story of the Model T, but perhaps not everything about how Henry Ford came to the Ford business system. The first was to define the problem differently. And he, of course, defined the problem as creating a car that everyone could afford, just like IKEA defines the problem as creating products that have great design that everyone can afford. And Henry Ford's definition of the problem was different from that of other car manufacturers who were focusing on catering for the wealthy and the rich who could afford cars. Ford said the problem is making it affordable for everyone. And then he broke it down. And the cow at the top represents the famous experience of his employees going to the Chicago slaughterhouses and seeing the moving disassembly line where the carcasses was moved from worker to worker and chopped up. And someone had the great idea, we can create a moving assembly line. And then the second one is the black paint. Well, again, there's a famous, everyone always says, the black paint was because it dried fast so that he could move the assembly line. Well, not quite, but he was trying to get a technology in paint that would be more durable than the paint existing at that time. And he turned to ironmongery and a japanned process which uses bitumen in the paint in order to create durability. Now, that durable paint did take a long time to dry, and there was a difference. So it was the paint solution which he got from elsewhere. And then the third is John Stuart Mill, wrote Principles of Political Economy, a great thinker, and who first really articulated the notion of relating workers' wages to the productivity of what they did, cooperative payment. So he took that and turned that into his famous $1 a day payment system. And then he was making all these cars, so the question is, how do I sell them? And his predecessor had been Singer, who invented the sewing machine, but didn't have the money to build up a sales force. So he went and created independent dealers for sewing machines. Ford saw that, took that element, put it with all the others, and there you get the automotive dealer system which we have today around the world. Put it all together and you have Ford. Now that principle of breaking it apart and finding precedents in other places for each component you see here today. I'll skip the look at Google at the bottom. Google comes from putting together the academic citation principle, where success, being top of the ranking, comes from how extensively you are cited by fellow academics. They took that idea and they put it together with the Alta Vista, the early search engine, with the mining data at Stanford, the experience of data mining, and Overture, which was the pioneer of pay-per-click. You put all those different elements together and you get Google. So, beginning and the end of history, you get the same principle decomposed. Now, if you think that's how breakthrough innovation happens, how do you go about it in a company? Well, we identify the problem, get very clear with companies about what it is they're trying to solve, break that down to individual elements. Here is a company whose pharmaceutical is coming off patent. So, almost automatically, it becomes lacks product differentiation. There are lots of companies that succeed where there isn't a lot of product definition. You know, Evian in water or hotels or whatever. Customers were unsure of the product value. Does this thing really fix my problem? And in fact, there was some embarrassment and stigma around the particular problem. There are people who deal with that problem. You can learn from those, you know, whether it's Viagra or BP or others. And fourthly, the advisors, the pharmacists, the doctors, struggle to understand what the customer really needs. We had some great examples of that earlier today, but a pervasive problem which you can see solved elsewhere. Each of these we find precedents from other environments which we can help clients look at and recombine to create something new. So here you get a process which says, first, you need to know the problem you're solving. Secondly, you need to promote that creativity by bringing in ideas from elsewhere, component by component, not the whole business, but pieces of it, so that the assembly is original, but the components are. That helps people maximize their creativity. And that is really what they need before they go on to deliver the business. And the delivery is all the classic disciplines of strategy, business planning, and so forth, which are needed. The people who are going to do that need to participate in the creative process that comes before it, and that's why having a clear structure like this is critical to taking control of your business. And I'll end, with a short quote from my favorite psychologist, which is Jung, who said, "I'm not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. I am what I choose to become." And taking control of the informal as well as the formal, and providing a structure to help ordinary managers access the creativity and inspiration of other businesses is the secret to taking control of what you become as an organization. Thank you.